Hello, viewers, it's Josie. Today is Oscar Sunday, and in honor of the 94th Academy Awards, I'm going to give out my own alternate personal Oscars with fictional nominees and winners, like if I picked the nods and winners. And please note that this will be much different than the actual Oscar nominations. I'll be having 8 to 10 nominees in each category with the exception of a few. And the goal of this video is to highlight films that may not have been highlighted elsewhere. I mean, there will be some crossover, but mostly my own personal preferences. Okay, let's start with Best Song. So May We Start from Annette by the Sparks Brothers. They had a great 2021. Best Sound and Visual Effects. No competition. Both are going to Dune. I know it's obvious, but you can't beat that. It's just so epic. For Best Scene, it's actually a tie here between the jail fight scene in Malignant, and the hide scene in Power of the Dog, where Benedict Cumberbatch's character says, "Because she was drunk!" Okay, I know the jail fight scene in Malignant is super tacky, but it made me laugh so hard. Okay, for Best Breakthrough Performance, I'm giving it to two people here from the same movie. Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman for Licorice Pizza. It's a shame these two didn't get as much recognition this season. This was Alana's first performance in a movie coming from the music world in the band Haim. Paul Thomas Anderson actually directed a couple of Haim's music videos, so fun fact, her mom was his art teacher in elementary school. And giving Cooper Hoffman accolades would be such a great way to honor his late dad, who was Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was such an amazing actor, and I still can't believe he's gone. And Philip Seymour Hoffman would be so proud of his son, and I bet he is up in heaven. For Best Young Actor or Actress. Okay, we got 5 nominees here. Jude Hill for Belfast, Cooper Hoffman for Licorice Pizza, Emilia Jones for Coda, Devin McDowell for Annette, and Woody Norman for Come On, Come On. And I'm giving it to Woody Norman for Come On, Come On. As a young kid, he was able to be just as good on the same level as Joaquin Phoenix. He's British, which is surprising. He's not your typical cute kid. Like, he doesn't make the character feel like a manufactured movie cute kid. I think that's also a strength of Mike Mills' writing and directing. I can't wait to see what Woody Norman does next. Come On, Come On's a movie that was so grossly overlooked this season. For Best Production Design, it was actually let's go to editing first. For Best Editing, I'm giving it to Flea. Editing can make or break a documentary. I forgot to read out my nominations. Okay, I'll read out my nominations first, and then I'll explain. Okay, Best Editing, the nominees are Drive My Car, Dune, Flea, The French Dispatch, The Last Duel, Mitchells vs. the Machines, Nightmare Alley, Red Rocket, Spencer, and The Worst Person in the World. I'm sorry for reading out the winner first. The winner is Flea, because like I said, editing can make or break a documentary, and editing an animated documentary sounds like an even more difficult task. So that's very so much so worth applauding. So my winner for best editing is Flea. For best score, the nominees are Come On, Come On, done by the Desner brothers. Um, Drive My Car, scored by Iko Ishibashi. Dune by Hans Zimmer. The French Dispatch, done by Alexandre Desplat. Nightmare Alley, done by Nathan Johnson. 9 Days, scored by Antonio Pinto. The Power of the Dog, scored by Johnny Greenwood. Spencer, also scored by Johnny Greenwood. And Titan, scored by Jim Williams. And I know this is the boring answer because he's most likely going to win the Oscar tonight. But I can't help but give it to Dune, Hans Zimmer. I mean, such an epic score. And he I believe he invented instruments for it, and that's a very difficult task. So I just have to award him there. For best makeup and hair, my nominees are Dune, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, The French Dispatch, The Green Knight, Last Night in Soho, Nightmare Alley, Spencer and the Suicide Squad, and Titan. And my winner here is actually Titan. I'll explain more later. For best costumes, the nominees are Dune, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, The French Dispatch, The Last Duel, Last Night in Soho, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, Spencer, and the Suicide Squad. And I'm giving it to The French Dispatch. I love the colors of the costumes. And, well, some of it's in black and white, but still, costumes are still really good. For best production design, the nominees are Dune, The French Dispatch, The Last Duel, Last Night in Soho, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, 9 Days, The Power of the Dog, Spencer, and The Tragedy of Macbeth. And this was a really tough call for me between Nightmare Alley and The French Dispatch, but I had to give the edge to The French Dispatch because there's so many sets in that film that the management I can imagine requires a high degree of difficulty. And that makes it such an innovative achievement here. For cinematography, the nominees are Drive My Car, Dune, The French Dispatch, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, 9 Days, The Power of the Dog, Spencer, Titan, and The Tragedy of Macbeth. And again, another tough one to decide on. I decided to give it to Nightmare Alley. And I love the color palette and the positioning and movements of the camera because it really gave it like a classic noir feeling, even though it's a color, not black and white. Well, the Nightmare Alley is a remake. The original isn't black and white. And I understand that that Guillermo del Toro has a black and white version of Nightmare Alley that played at the New Beverly. And I'd be curious to check that one out. I wonder if, on the Blu-ray, that version will be available. For Best Adapted Screenplay, the nominees are Coda, Drive My Car, Dune, Flea. It's original, but I'm frauding it here to make up for a missing slot. The Last Duel, Nightmare Alley, The Power of the Dog, and The Suicide Squad. I decided to go with Drive My Car. With Murakami being so hard to adapt and the mixing of 3 short stories from the same short story collection mixed it to one screenplay is an achievement in screenwriting. And then for original screenplay, my nominees are Belfast, Come On, Come On, The Killing of Two Lovers, Licorice Pizza, The Mitchells versus the Machines, 9 Days, Parallel Mothers, Ship a Baby, Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, and The Worst Person in the World. And I'm giving it to Licorice Pizza. Some criticize the screenplay for being too meandering. I actually think that's its biggest strength. Making an episodic narrative feel so engaging without feeling dull is a really hard thing to do. And that has to do with the likability and humanity brought to Gary and Alana from Paul Thomas Anderson's writing and directing, and their performances by Cooper Hoffman and Alana Haim. Supporting actress. My nominees are Zazie Beetz for 9 Days, Cate Blanchett for Nightmare Alley, Olivia Colman for Mitchells vs. the Machines. I know it's a voice performance, but I had to include it. Kirsten Dunst for The Power of the Dog, Katherine Hunter for The Tragedy of Macbeth, Toko Miura for Drive My Car, Sepideh Moafi, if I'm pronouncing her name right, for The Killing of Two Lovers, Vinette Robinson for Boiling Point, Milena Smith for Parallel Mothers, and Susanna Sun for Red Rocket. And I'm giving it to Toko Miura for Drive My Car. The way she internalizes emotions throughout the film and yet remains so communicative is just fantastic. She's young. She's like 25. I hope she gets to star in more films. And then supporting actor. My nominees are Benicio del Toro for The French Dispatch, Anders Danielson Lee for The Worst Person in the World, Corey Hawkins for The Tragedy of Macbeth, Troy Kotzer for Coda, Vincent Linden for Titan, Woody Norman for Come On, Come On, Kiyohiko Shibukawa, if I'm pronouncing his name right, for Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, Cody Smith-McPhee for The Power of the Dog, Benedict Wong for 9 Days, and Jeffrey Wright for The French Dispatch. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this one here. I'm giving it to Anders Danielson Lee for The Worst Person in the World. What a gut punch of a performance. Renate Reinsve gets most of the credit for this film, which she should and is deserving of because she's wonderful, and she won the Best Actress prize at Cannes. But Anders, to me, is the standout. I saw The Worst Person in the World at the New York Film Festival with my brother Mike, back in September. And the screening we went to was not in New York, but not in New York City, but it was in Pleasantville, which is like above the Bronx, at the Jacob Burns Film Center. And when we left the theater and got in the car, my brother said to me, "You know, I normally hate movies like this, but this was actually pretty good." And he mentioned that he teared up from Anders Danielson Lee's performance. And I think that's a strength of the writing, and of course Anders Danielson Lee. He gave one of my favorite performances of the entire season, leading or supporting. And yeah, that's all I have to say for that one. For Best Lead Female Performance, my nominees are Jessica Chastain for The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Jodie Comer for The Last Duel, Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers, Alana Haim for Licorice Pizza, Emilia Jones for Coda, Thomasin McKenzie for Last Night in Soho, and Renate Reinsve for The Worst Person in the World. I got more, never mind. Agatha Roussel for Titan, Rachel Sennett for Shiva Baby, and Kristen Stewart for Spencer. And my winner, you would think I would go with Renate Reinsve because I gave Anders Best Supporting Actor, but I'm actually gonna give it to Agatha Roussel for Titan. She did not get enough accolades this season. Now, when I think of transformative performance, a lot of times they give Best Actor or Best Actress to a very transformative performance. And when I think of transformative performances for movies that were released in 2021, I do think of Chastain, of course. But I also think of Agatha Roussel in Titan. She starts off as a complete sociopath and then literally transforms into another character where we see like this newfound level of humanity. And a lot of the performance is nonverbal. And I always give credit to performances that are nonverbal like that and still help tell a great story. Because, acting is reacting, as they say. And it's not just what you say. For Best Actor, Best Lead Actor, my nominees are Bradley Cooper for Nightmare Alley, Clayne Crawford for The Killing of Two Lovers, Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog, Winston Duke for 9 Days, Stephen Graham for Boiling Point, Cooper Hoffman for Licorice Pizza, Hitoshi Nishijima for Drive My Car, Joaquin Phoenix for Come On, Come On, Simon Rex for Red Rocket, and Denzel Washington for The Tragedy of Macbeth. And I'm giving it to Benedict Cumberbatch for The Power of the Dog. I mean, how do you watch the "because she was drunk" scene and not give him an Oscar? The best part of his performance is how he maintains a balance between being menacing and yet showing humility and vulnerability. Deep down, Phil is a wounded, terrified man. For Best Acting Ensemble, my nominees are Coda, Dune, The French Dispatch, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, Nightmare Alley, 9 Days, Shiva Baby, The Suicide Squad, Tragedy of Macbeth, and Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. And this was tough for me. But I'm going to give it to 9 Days. For those of you who have seen the film, you understand that without the brilliance of the ensemble, you wouldn't feel for the souls in terms of wanting them to be given lives on Earth. For those of you who don't know, 9 Days is about... Let me read the description on Google for you guys. A man interviews 5 unborn souls to determine which one should be given a new life on Earth, with the unchosen ones facing oblivion. So, that's my acting ensemble winner. For Best Director, my nominees are Pedro Almodovar for Parallel Mothers, Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, Wes Anderson for The French Dispatch, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, Joel Cohen for The Tragedy of Macbeth, Guillermo del Toro for Nightmare Alley, Julia Ducournau for Titan, Raisuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car, and Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy, because he had 2 movies this year, Joachim Trier for The Worst Person in the World, and Denis Villeneuve for Dune. And I'm giving it to the one who should have got it from the very beginning, and that is the director of the Palme d'Or winning film, Julia Ducournau for Titan. I mean, what a ballsy vision. She's just as much the star of Titan as Agatha Roussel and Vincent Lindon are. Nobody could have directed Titan but her. Now, we get to the top 10 and my winner for Best Picture out of these. This was tough for me because I had to boot out some films that I really, really liked. But And also, this list is subject to change over time. I hate ranking movies. These aren't ranked. This is just ABC order. But it's top 10 lists change over time. They're not fixed. But for today, the top 10 films because, as the way Brian Sauer and Elric Kane put it on the Pure Cinema podcast, 10 films because 2021-2022 season in ABC order are Come On, Come On, Drive My Car, Dune, Flea, The French Dispatch, Licorice Pizza, 9 Days, The Power of the Dog, Titan, and The Worst Person in the World. And I've settled on Licorice Pizza. It's funny, it's romantic, it's nostalgic, it's a cult classic in the making. I know they like to give Best Picture to stuff with political relevance. I don't think Licorice Pizza will win Best Picture at the actual Oscars, and I don't even think it's going to win Original Screenplay, which, is unfortunate, but, it will gain, I think over time it will become a cult classic, as I said. It's a lot more politically relevant than people give it credit for. It's basically a satire of the supply chain. It takes note of the gas crisis of 1973, something very reminiscent of nowadays. The 70s were a politically hectic time. A lot of what we're seeing today is a repeat of the 70s. And in the midst of that, in Licorice Pizza, we have two people doing what they love to do, thriving in business, and demonstrating youthful energy against the odds. And yeah, those are my personal alternate Oscars for the 2021-2022 season. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, you can click the like button and subscribe, and the links to my socials are in the description below. Happy on Oscar Sunday, y'all, if you're watching it the day of, or whenever. Just hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye for now.